Today, we live in an age of information overload, where historical records, academic research, and primary sources are more accessible than ever. In this context, attempts by the PRC to mislead the public about history are not only outdated but ultimately futile. One of the most persistent claims is that Tibet was part of the Mongol Yuan Dynasty. This claim does not stand up to serious historical scrutiny. Let's look at the facts. First, modern history itself establishes a clear dividing line. In 1913, Tibet and Mongolia signed the Treaty of Friendship, formally recognizing each other as independent states. Just 1 year earlier, in 1912, Mongolia had signed a treaty with Russia. These agreements did not emerge in a vacuum. They marked the end of the previous Tibetan, Mongolian historical framework and the beginning of a new political era. If Tibet and Mongolia were to recognize each other as sovereign states mutually, the claim that Tibet is an inseparable part of a past Chinese dynasty would become deeply questionable. Second, the very concept of the Yuan dynasty deserves closer examination. According to a response from a Mongolian scholar, the term Yuan itself is not originally Mongolian and may, in fact, have Tibetan linguistic roots. This aligns precisely with Tibetan historical accounts of the patron-lama relationship between Tibet and the Mongols. In Tibetan, the word for patron is yuandak. By the time Kublai Khan formally proclaimed the Mongol Yuan polity in 1271, the patron-lama relationship between Sakya ruler Drogon Chogyal Phagpa and Kublai Khan had already been established. In this light, Yuan is better understood not as a territorial empire ruling Tibet, but as a patron state, a political-religious relationship, not a colonial one. Third, even within Tibetan historical writings, some misunderstandings need clarification. Take the year 1244, for example. Sakya Pandita left Sakya to visit the royal camp of Godin Khan, the son of Ogidi Khan, after receiving an invitation delivered by a Mongol envoy. He brought with him his 2 young nephews, Phagpa, 10, and Chaknadorj, 6. Some Tibetan scholars later misinterpreted this event, assuming that Mongol soldiers had invaded Tibet. This is inaccurate. At that time, the Mongol polity did not distinguish between civil and military officials. Everyone was technically a soldier. The presence of an army envoy does not imply a military invasion. Fourth, this understanding is reinforced by external observers. In the preface to We Tibetans, an intimate picture by a woman of Tibet, written by his wife Rinchen Dolma, the 20th century British diplomat Lewis McGrath King made a striking observation. He noted that in the 13th century, Tibet was the only power in Asia that stood on equal footing with Mongolia. Beyond the patron-lama relationship, King identified another crucial factor: Tibet's environment. The high altitude and harsh terrain made it unsuitable for large Mongol armies. Moreover, many Mongol soldiers were themselves Tibetan, and the Mongol Empire's military organization drew heavily from the traditions of the earlier Tibetan Empire. So what does all this tell us? History is not a blank slate that can be rewritten at will. It is a continuous process, yesterday leaving its imprint on today. No amount of political narrative can erase treaties, linguistic evidence, diplomatic relationships, or environmental realities. The claim that Tibet was part of the Yuan dynasty is not history. It is ideology dressed up as history. And in an era where information is everywhere, such distortions cannot survive for long. Wishing everyone a happy new year. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next Friday.